3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I fought it.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely.
Ready?
I can move you. Making review. Making review.
Say
6,
5.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to part 2 of the Halloween film retrospective with your host and random Canadian Larry Parsons and our guest, Mr. Lee Beckman. We're going to look at the last 5 films in the franchise and then we are going to rank all 10 of them. So we'll get right to business, but before we do so, as usual, I have to tell anyone listening that there will be coarse language and there will be spoilers. You can find the show on Facebook. You can find it on iTunes. You can find our website at rankandreview.ca. That's RANKNREVIEW.ca. And you can please send me some feedback. I'd love to get some more feedback from you guys. And you can do that at rankandreview@gmail.com. That's RANKNREVIEW@gmail.com. Thank you so much. Let's get back to the bloodletting. Welcome to the Halloween Retrospective, Part 2.
Every legend is based on fact. Every myth is grounded in truth. For 17 years, the town of Haddonfield, Illinois, has been haunted by a night when evil roamed the streets and a madman ruled the night. Everyone knows his name. Now, everyone will know the truth.
I knew what he was, but I never knew why.
Halloween 6, the origin of Michael Myers.
So let's talk about Part 6, Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers.
Yep.
To talk about Cursed, I think we've talked about several troubled productions already, but this one has got a whole new producer's cut that's going to be released all these years later.
You're already jumping into this, okay?
I'm just saying, but I want to let people know that I want to base this review that we're talking about here not on this new cut that's about to be released or whatever, but on the theatrical cut.
It is released, but yeah.
Okay, well, but on the theatrical cut of
Yeah.
this, because that's what I'm basing my personal view on. That's where it was released as in the most mass market medium. That's the way most people saw it. Well, that's the only way you saw it when it was released.
Yeah.
And I think even the people involved in the film would say it's a hot fucking mess.
Yes.
And I've seen the alternate ending. I haven't seen the entire recut of the film, but I've seen, where the movie was going and the trajectory that they originally intended for Loomis and blah, 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 blah. But as none of that's in here, that's not how I'm going to rate this particular movie.
Okay.
As I'm going to rate this particular movie, it's another slasher entry. It's also set in Haddonfield. Ant-Man, a very, very young and pretty Paul Rudd.
Yep, he's skinny and young.
Yeah, is here, one of these characters who inexplicably knows way more information than they seem to should. And the mysterious figure that was nudged in the previous film, the cowboy boots, the guy. They're trying to build much more around the sort of character of Michael Myers, expand the universe, because I think, like I said, they were sort of... Haddonfield was getting played out.
Yeah.
So their way to sort of get around this is to get the sort of cult aspect going on. There is the undercurrent you talked about of, the militias and the sort of default protector, alpha male thing. There's also an under thing of this, satanic, culty, whatever you want to call it.
The cult of Thorn that's called in this movie.
Yeah. So as much as there's a whole school there to protect the world from Michael Myers, there's a whole school there basically inflicting Michael Myers on the world. You'd think that this would be more interesting the way we're describing it, but it isn't. The movie starts with them killing off the Jamie Lloyd character, Daniel Harris.
Big mistake there.
Again, a mistake.
Well,
it wasn't Daniel Harris.
It wasn't a mistake killing her. It was a mistake how
they killed her.
Yeah.
Yeah. She manages to save the baby, but not save herself. And she dies this awful, awful, awful death.
Yeah, and she dies two different ways. There's the theatrical cut, and then she dies differently in the producer's cut.
But either way, she dies an awful death.
Yeah.
And you flash back to cute little 11, 12-year-old Daniel Harris hanging over there. You're just like, and it was all for naught.
Yeah.
It's not exactly Halloween 3, and again, I'm not saying you're not allowed to kill off that character. I'm saying if you are going to kill off that character, make it count, make me care.
Here's the thing, because I have seen both cuts of this movie, and you think Halloween 3 is bug shit crazy.
Yeah.
The producer's cut is batshit crazy.
Yeah.
And honestly, if we're going to talk about the mistakes in the theatrical cut, I'm gonna have to reference the producer's cut and talk about what happened behind the scenes of this movie, because some of it is legendary and led to the debacle, which is Halloween 6: The Curse of Michael Myers. This all starts with screenwriter Daniel Farrens. He basically, legend has it, he pitched the idea to Mustafa Akkad, and Akkad really liked his idea and pitch, and at least idea for the story. And this guy, Daniel, was longtime fan, first-time writer, who somehow talked his way into writing the script for this movie. His script is cray-cray. One of the things that happens, and it's in the producer's cut, is basically, at the beginning, Jamie is giving birth to basically a baby.
As opposed to a horse or
we see in flashback. So basically what it happens is the Cult of Thorn basically has been using Michael for years as this sort of conduit to their evil. And Michael has to completely eliminate his family to make an ultimate sacrifice. So this cult, so the crops can be fertile and this cult can regain its strength, its grip on the world. But here's the thing that does not make a lick of sense. If your whole plan is to have Michael Myers wipe out his family, then why on earth do you have a scene in the producer's cut where he is physically impregnating Jamie Lloyd in a ceremony?
So she was carrying his baby?
Michael Myers raped Jamie Lloyd to basically continue spawn the scene, and it's the cult is basically ordering to do this. So we have a scene in the producer's cut where Michael is, pardon my French, fucking the shit out of Jamie Lloyd. It is crazy, it is disgusting, and it is a wrong decision.
It's weird. I just got a flashback to when we were talking about the Friday the 13th franchise.
Yes.
And there was the one entry where the girl says she has a flashback to where she encountered Jason in the woods.
Yeah.
And because she's still alive, and by the context of her story, we can only be led to understand that Jason raped her.
Yeah.
And because he's been such a non-sexualized figure all this time, that he's still mentally a child, it didn't read true to me.
Yeah.
Now, again, I didn't get that in my version of this. As far as I'm concerned, she was protecting her child, and
it's not in the theatrical cut.
And Michael was after the child because the same reason he was always just killing his family bloodline.
Yeah.
And I guess it kind of works. In the version of the movie I watched, it just becomes this weird shadow play in the background. I can tell that there's stuff superfluous going on to the left and right of these scenes, but they've bared it back to the most basic Michael Myers chase slasher. It's like they made this ambitious cult movie, which was a disaster, and they probably knew it was a disaster. So they took that disaster and they cut it back to basically an even weaker derivation of the Haddonfield Halloween franchise.
they basically had painted themselves into a corner by the time 5 rolled around and left a lot of unanswered questions, and this movie was supposed to deliver it. I was excited to see this movie because I was a huge fan. I wanted to know who the man in the trench coat and the cowboy boots were. They had built this other storyline with this cult at some point, or at least some sort of shadow organization.
It wasn't completely out of the clear blue sky.
Yeah. So we also wanted to see that story, or at least sort of story arc, end with Jamie Lloyd. Here's the thing. Danielle Harris read the script and hated it. But at the same time knew that a lot of fans wanted to see her at least reprise her role. So she asked for $5,000 to at least do this movie, even though she knew that it was, well, not very good. And the producers and director went, no, you're basically not, you're a supporting character who disappears. We're not going to pay the $5,000.
Thanks for all you did. Thanks for being an amazing child actor, but fuck you for asking for $5,000.
Yeah, so she said no. They said no, sorry. And basically recast it, some actor.
Jane Smith, I don't know.
Yeah, whatever her name was, as Jamie Lloyd. And I didn't even know that Jamie Lloyd was in the movie the first time I saw it. I
just thought it was some chick.
Yeah, so I didn't even make that connection. So when she died, I felt nothing.
Like I said, it was an awful death.
Yeah.
But like again, and then when you realize the full context of it, it's like, oh, it's that cute little girl from the previous movies.
Yeah, that was a mistake not bringing her back, and that's the reason why she didn't return.
I said this before, but like it's not saying you can't kill her.
Yeah.
Just make her death count.
Yeah.
Make us feel something, and then again, but. So much of this movie, because it was, made one way and cut into another thing, these choices weren't being made for art. These were all being made for profit. Right?
Anyways, getting back to the legend of this movie. So, about the 3/4 mark, they had initially shot the majority of the movie, but they soon realized that they'd run out of money. So, director Joe Chappelle and the screenwriter and Mustafa Akkad basically went to the Weinstein brothers and said, hey,
we're out of money.
We're out of money, but we almost got the latest Halloween movie. Can you help us? And so Harvey Weinstein saw the movie and said, all right, I'll buy the rights to this movie and the franchise because this is a cash cow. I can do something with it, but I want this cut out, this cut out, this cut out, and I want this movie way more violent and way more hip.
Yeah.
So, and some of his decisions I agree with. Get rid of the cult rape scene because it was just
nobody wants
it was exploitive for exploitive's sake, and it didn't make any sense logically because why, if your whole goal is to kill the Myers bloodline, would you have Michael essentially continue the bloodline?
It's not quite the same thing as Jason. Maybe it is because he's a kid when he makes his first kill, but
Yeah.
I've never felt anything sexual about Michael
He's an
Myers.
asexual being to me.
If he had sex with that character, I mean, as far as the story, that's how he broke his. That's how he,
That's how he popped his cherry, technically.
Yeah.
And the reason why, in theory, he gets so upset is when people, teenagers having sex. No, I must kill them. So the fact that he is showing his sexuality at this point, it's a wrong decision.
Yeah. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that.
Yeah.
We want sex and violence. We don't necessarily want to see Michael Myers having sex with anybody.
A decision that I don't agree with, and maybe it's because at this point they wanted to at least sort of, milk that cow for what it's worth. And it didn't help the fact that at this point Donald Pleasance died very quickly after the initial shoot of Halloween 6.
Well, at least he died before he could watch the film.
Yeah. But something that didn't make a lick of sense in the theatrical cut is the ending.
Yeah.
In the producer's cut, what we have here, and I think this is where the title does make sense, is that
it's passed on to Loomis now.
The curse of Michael, of being the protector of Michael, is then given over to Donald Pleasance, Dr. Loomis's character. I liked that decision. I thought that was kind of a neat choice made both by the screenwriter and the director Joe Chappelle at this point.
The idea being for the next Halloween movie, instead of being the guy trying to stop Michael Myers, he would be the wingman to Michael Myers.
Yeah. I thought that was an interesting choice. And that ending makes sense. But the ending we get in Halloween 6 is one of the most anticlimactic, what? Kind of happened. It sort of reminds me of the end of number 2, where it almost seems like they literally ran out of money and had this. Yeah, the pace of it's all wrong. For the spoilers, here we go. Halloween 6 ends with a final battle between our man Ant-Man,
Yeah.
And Michael Myers battling out in the supposed birth room of Michael Myers is what we're meant to believe.
I think so.
And they have this battle, and then, sorry, what's the actor again? I'm drawing a blank here.
Paul Rudd?
Paul Rudd. Do you know which character he's playing, by the way, in the whole anthology of the Halloween? Do you remember the young boy from the original Halloween?
Oh, really? Same kid, right?
It's the same kid grown up.
That's
and
right. No, they do mention that.
Yeah.
Right.
So he's the adult version of this. Basically, then we meet the Donald Pleasance character and him and our survival girl, and they basically invite him. Dr. Loomis, why don't you come with us? No, I've got one last thing to do. And then we have those quick cuts of the Halloween mask and him screaming that same, no from number 4, and quick shots of a knife kind of stabbing, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's the end of the theatrical cut. And I remember sitting in Placerville Theater, may you rest in peace, because that was the last film I saw in Placerville Theater as well before it went, was that, and I kind of went, what was that? So what happened is that they couldn't bring Donald Pleasance back to reshoot the scenes.
He was busy being dead.
And Harvey Weinstein didn't like the fact that he was given the curse, so they cut that out. But in doing so, they have no ending.
Yeah.
They really don't. We are left to think that Michael Myers is bleeding on the floor in this weird genetic birth room, and Donald Pleasance is essentially walking into this hospital to, finish the job? I don't know.
Well, all the stuff around the movie is proving to be far more interesting than the movie itself. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
It almost seems like one of these, is one version better? Is the other version better? It seems like the whole thing just needed to be scrapped. And, sometimes shit doesn't work out and everybody just needs to dust themselves off and go to the next party.
Yeah.
But, if it even vaguely held together, they're going to release it and try and make money, and that's why it's here. And because I'm a horror movie completist, this is included in my collection. I'd like to think if it was any other movie franchise, this would be, as far as the Michael Myers movies of these go, be easily the worst of them. Alas, it is not.
No. I also get the sense, did you ever watch that documentary, 25 Years of Terror? Yeah, they talked. Kind things are not said about director Joe Chappelle. A lot of the actors kind of said, he was more concerned about his 3-picture contract deal.
And this was the first movie.
The first one. He would later grace us with, wait for it, Phantoms, because Ben Affleck was fucking the shit in that movie. Yeah, his next movie was Phantoms. I don't even know what his third movie was, but kind words were not given to Joe Chappelle. But he did go with Mustafa Akkad to go with Harvey Weinstein and said, look, I got this movie.
He played ball too. They were fucking with him. It must have been a hard thing to deal with.
Yeah.
Okay, your movie's a mess. Let's fix it. Oh, your star just died. We can't fix it. Oh, this. Oh, that. I mean,
we got a release date. Boom.
Yeah, and we're gonna release something no matter what. And guess what? Your fucking name's gonna be on it.
Yeah.
So I'm not unsympathetic for him, but I'm not so sympathetic.
Oh hell, man! You know what? At least he made a Halloween movie. Yeah. Hats off to him. It's a vapid mess of a movie. It is the logic is all over the place. I do like the fact that they tried to at least answer some questions that started really even in all the way number 2, sorry, and we finally get some sort of ending to it, especially with the man who the identity of the man in the trench coat is played by the actor. Let me see, I forget the name. Mitchell Ryan, we find out, essentially is the man in the trench coat. He's secretly been helping Dr. Loomis all along, and we're almost meant to believe that has been eyeing him up to, carry on the curse of Michael Myers.
It was all a long-term trap.
But not only that, but the houses surrounding the Myers house, because we find out that a family is once again moved back into the Myers house. Mm-hmm. That the houses around are all part of this cult of Thorn. This movie is redonkulous.
Yeah.
And sadly...
But it's not sort of fun, crazy redonkulous like part 3 either. It's more sad, frustrating.
Yes.
Redonkulous.
Yeah, it's also a tacky move to have, the Halloween score done by guitar. It just is all I say. Also, the fact that, they had a song by Creed makes me kind of just...
Again, shit like that is just like bad hair, bad music, that's shit in the background. That's just the time the movie was made. That's not even really the movie's fault in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's the wrong music for the wrong scene, then that's their fault. But
My mistake. The Creed song is on the next one. My bad. Anyways, sorry.
We'll clean that up. Anyway, at
Halloween
17
6. It's a vapid mess of a movie. For Halloween completists, yeah, I'd say I'd go watch it. A weird anomaly, if you can get your hands on it, and I do want it, there is a Blu-ray box set of Halloween, and I had it in my hands at one point, but it was over $100, and it was one of those...
For a set of movies that you've seen 100 times.
And I own at least 3/4 of. It would almost seem bad, but me wanting anyways. The producer's cut is in there. The producer's cut is batshit crazy.
Yeah.
There's
a
couple
what
things.
I'd say. Neither version, I think, is going to salvage this mess.
But because this had existed, it altered what we saw eventually, which made the movie incomprehensible. Avoid this movie, honestly, unless you're a Halloween completist. Then you kind of have to go see it. But besides that, blah.
Honestly, as much as we gave super faint praise to Part 5,
Yeah.
like, for the Loomis Tangent series,
Yeah.
it should just end with Part 5. Much the way I'm about to say with the Laurie Tangent series, they should stop with H2O.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, the curse of Michael Myers didn't happen, and resurrection never happened.
Yes.
And again, it's that weird mirror thing. They keep on repeating themselves in strange ways, but I'm ready to stop talking about this one.
It's 1998 in a remote California town at a secluded private school.
We could have a Halloween party, just the four of us. We could have a roaming orgy.
I love the way this man thinks. No booze, no drugs, no kidding.
One teacher is living in fear.
I'm not who you think I am. I changed my name when I went into hiding.
That's terrible. Take off your clothes.
My brother killed my sister.
How'd he do that?
With a really big kitchen knife.
That's enough. I can't take it, Mom. He's dead. It's been 20 years. What's he waiting for, huh? Don't you think he would have shown up by now?
What's going on, baby?
I don't know. This is a sick joke.
Now,
Come on!
the face of good and the face of evil will meet one last time. But this time, it's going to be a fight to the finish.
And now we discuss Water, the movie.
Yes.
I can't believe that. I'm sure somebody in the advertising campaign pointed out to them that all of their posters advertising for water might be confusing to some people. H2O, H2O. Halloween 20 years later. All of these other Halloween sequels after Part 2 didn't happen, people. It was all bullshit.
Well, that was smart by them.
Yeah.
I kind of thought, let's get...
There was no way to dig themselves out of the mess.
Yeah,
that
so
they were in.
let's not even try, because at this point it would be stupid.
Yeah.
I even love the original tagline they were going to do for this movie was, blood is thicker than water.
Yeah. Well, they got Jamie Lee Curtis back, and that's the only way to keep going at this point, because Donald Pleasance has sadly died.
Yep.
So, yeah, she's going to be our new protagonist, and she's all grown up, and she's sort of headmaster of this university campus. She's got a grown-up college-age son, and it's been 20 years, and she still kind of lives in fear of Halloween.
Yeah.
It's great because they give us a large empty campus to have all this play out on, so it's not Haddonfield again.
Yeah.
And, we've got all these big, great old buildings, lots of places to hide, lots of places to creep, lots of long, dark hallways. That helps us. And the fact that it had been so long and that the fans were hungry for a proper, Michael Myers movie with teeth.
Yeah.
H2O brought the goods.
Oh, yeah.
Steve Miner, who we have talked about before, is a strange dude. he does a lot of sort of franchise installments. He's like a workman director. And sometimes I want to fucking slap him around. I believe I lost my temper with our short and just frustrating review of his Day of the Dead.
Yeah.
Because of what a pointless and loveless exercise it was.
Yeah.
I won't say that here. I'm not sure how he got this gig. In fact, this is a much higher profile role than he typically gets, and that he would seem to get afterwards as well.
He did Lake Placid after this,
But,
I think.
That's right. But he brought some good suspense to this movie, and he gave us a very solid Michael Myers slasher movie. Again, he does not reinvent the wheel. He just gives the fans what they want in a slightly new variation. And brings the series into a very satisfying conclusion.
What should have been.
Satisfying and
what
clear
should have been.
Conclusion.
But somebody decided to make Resurrection.
We need to keep making money. But
Sorry.
Let's save our because I don't want to get angry now. I want to spend some love on this.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to say, and I'll let you talk about this movie too, because there's two of us here.
Yeah.
But this is a star-studded movie.
Yo.
Like, Josh Hartnett's kind of been doing a lot of TV lately, but
debut.
There was a while there where Josh Hartnett was, pretty big news.
Yeah.
Michelle Williams has gone on
Academy Award nominated. Michelle Williams.
LL Cool J is for some reason considered a box office draw. I don't know how much of an actor he is, but he's got a sort of interesting vibe to him.
Yeah.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yep.
Janet Leigh.
Yep.
Psycho.
Yep.
They really packed this movie with actors, and a lot of them weren't big at the time, but they were obviously good actors.
Yeah.
And
a lot of people
as much as I was
out.
defending some of the previous Halloween movies, not a lot of the acting wasn't the reason to be watching the movie a lot of the time.
Yeah.
That's why those small roles where they really do bring a good performance kind of stand out for me.
Yeah. Well, H2O has a lot of good things going for it. For one, the people behind the scenes all love this material, are all fans of this material, and that's
one of want it back on the right step.
And Steve Miner was one of them. But you also have Patrick Lussier. I'm sure I'm saying his name incorrectly. He's a famous cinema editor, but also has gone into the directing chair. He did like Drive, Angry. He's also known for being a ghost director when projects have been spinning out of control. Like Jessica Alba's The Eye apparently had some real problems, and he came in and righted the ship.
Rennie Harlan's kind of become a fixer in that way too.
Yeah. Anyways, Patrick Lussier. I'm sorry, Patrick. I'm butchering your name. I should have done my homework. Anyways, he was very much had his fingers in this pie and was the editor for this movie. Kevin Williamson was at the height of his powers at this point. He had already given us Scream. He was gaining more and more powers. I think he had done Killing or Teaching Mrs. Tingle.
Yeah.
Anyways, he wrote the script for this. And this movie is fun. It's fun and partly because of him.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. It is fun, but it's not his typical beat. Yeah. I'm a Kevin Williamson fan. A lot of people kind of get worn out on his premise. I mean, the first two Screams, I think, are quite strong. And he wrote the screenplay for them.
Yeah.
The Faculty, I think, is quite strong.
Yeah.
But what those three movies are doing well, and they're all doing the same thing, but they're doing it well, is basically poking fun at the genre while being a genre exercise.
Yeah.
And this is a pretty straight genre exercise. Yeah. It's a fun genre exercise, but it's not a come on.
There's a little bit of that. There's the joke about the closet when Jamie Lee Curtis is being chased by Michael at this point, and she's running and she opens up the closet and goes, no, fuck, not again, and slams it.
That is one of the few moments that rings insincere.
Yeah.
Right? To me, anyway.
Yeah.
Because who's that for? Did she just make a little?
It's for
herself?
It's for the fans.
That's right.
Yeah.
And when they're absolutely implicitly doing something that a character wouldn't do, but that the fans would enjoy, that's when I think they make the misstep.
Yeah.
But they don't do it very often here, and when they do, I kind of I understand it.
Yeah.
I understand why the closet scene's there.
The psycho music when we see Jamie Lee Curtis's mother show up, that's another one. Like, okay, yeah.
The fact that we revisit in most of the Halloween movies, there seems to be a murder where he stabs someone with a knife and lifts them off the ground. Her boyfriend's death is very much sort of a reference.
Played by one of the Arkin brothers, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not performed as a joke or a,
no, it's brutal.
Like, it's a terrible moment. We kind of like that guy, but we want to do it. But it is something that it's almost like a trademark Michael Myers kill.
Yeah.
That we recognize, classic Michael move, right?
Yeah.
But that is still horrifying. It's
Yeah.
not like, ha 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 ha. It's like, oh, dude.
Yeah.
And that's where I prefer to be with the Halloween movie.
Yeah, for the fans of the series, and then she'd shown up, I think, both in 1, 2, and 4. Do you remember the nurse at the beginning with Dr. Loomis? She's the first victim.
Yeah.
That's a nice touch. But the best decision they made with this movie that Kevin Williams decided to do is Laurie Strode is no longer a victim.
No.
And she turns...
She's Ripley'd up a little bit.
She, basically at the beginning of the third act, basically all of a sudden grabs a big axe and becomes Amazon Warrior Queen. Yeah. And that was such the right move that even in the theaters that I saw this for the first time, tingles happened all over my body. When she screams, Michael! Best decision they could have done. And it is. And it then becomes a smackdown between Laurie...
She's not going to run and get the police.
No.
She's not going to run away. She's going to confirm that her son and the students that are left are safe.
Yeah.
And she's going to lead Michael away from the place. And she's going to kill the fuck out of him.
And you know what? Yeah. Like, literally, I was applauding when I saw that.
This has been 20 years coming. And the reason that she's been paranoid is because some part of her knows it.
Yeah.
And this confrontation, like, part of her, she's been psychologically preparing for it. And it is very satisfying.
Yeah.
So, and that's why we get so mad at the next movie.
Yeah.
Can I enter my racist stage of the review?
Oh, are we talking about LL now?
I fucking hate LL Cool J in this movie.
Okay, yeah,
and it's not the first horror movie that I fucking hate LL Cool J in.
Yeah.
A little movie called Deep Blue Sea.
Hey.
I know, I love the movie. It's a dumb movie, but I love it.
Yeah,
but every time we cut to LL Cool J, I'm like, shut your fucking mouth. You're not taking any of this seriously. I don't believe the stakes.
Yeah.
You're making funny one-liners to yourself.
Yeah.
And he's doing the same goddamn thing here. Yeah. And everything else about the movie is working.
Yeah.
And to add insult to injury, they killed the character off. Oh, but no, they didn't, because we can't kill him because we like him so much.
We gotta play with the cliche of killing.
I hate that so much.
Yeah.
I think that it would have been so much more powerful had she accidentally legit killed the security guard, right?
Yeah,
and I would have been happy because no more goddamn LL Cool J.
Yeah.
And it's not that he's a terrible actor, just like he's always used in the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Everybody else in the movie takes it seriously.
Yeah.
They're scared. There's stakes. LL Cool J is always unmistakably in the movie. Yeah. And he knows he's in a movie, and he's kind of happy that he's in the movie. And it takes me right the fuck out of it.
This isn't the first time that this series makes this mistake, but this series is very guilty of hiring rappers, trying to be actors.
Save it.
And,
we'll get there.
and put them in the movie. It's not the worst casting choice this series has ever done. Yeah. We'll get to that.
But I get his presence in the movie. It's sort of like, the Halloween has been a painfully white franchise. Why not have some different faces in here?
Yeah.
And LL Cool J, if it's going to bring butts to seats, for sure, have him in the movie. Just work on that script. I hate that archetype character, and I hate that he's played it several times.
Yeah.
He felt more movie than anyone else in the movie.
Yeah.
And it's like part 7 Halloween franchise. It's a pretty movie, but he was the guy who took me out of it.
Yeah. One thing that's sort of distracting to me, and I really noticed it this time around, is they couldn't get the rights to show the original Michael Myers mask. So throughout
lightly augmented.
Yeah. So throughout the movie, the mask does change somewhat. It is distracting, and even at one point they CGI'd on.
Really?
Basically William Shatner's face, and it looks horrible. It's quick, and it's one of the scenes right where one of our teenagers is killed. It takes you out of it. Yeah. Even more so on the Blu-ray version, if you do ever get a chance to watch it. It's a little distracting, but the reasons why they couldn't do it is they couldn't afford the rights. Yeah. But whatever. Look, this was a much reinvigorated entry in the franchise. I loved the fuck out of this movie. More than I should, because it is a slasher film. It's also mercifully short.
It is very quick.
It's like I said, it's barely 85 minutes with credits.
Yeah.
So it's over before it starts, and I think that's one thing that works in its favor. The cast is
very strong,
way better than it should have been for a movie like this. Nice choice releasing it on the summer as well.
Yeah. And the director shows uncharacteristic sort of, skill in manipulating us.
Yeah.
A lot of the violence is restrained too, going back to the original Halloween, other than the Adam Arkin kill, which is pretty brutal.
Yeah.
There's a couple that are even off screen we see about to happen, and
the escape blade to the face is a nice choice.
Yeah. But there's this scene where the drunken horny college kid, because every one of these has to have the drunk horny kid.
Yeah.
It's like reaching down the drain to get the bottle opener, and they're showing the knives on the wall. They're showing him reaching into the carburetor. They're giving us all of these different ways of how.
But to me, that's the Halloween franchise.
And it's really well done. And
Yeah.
I've never seen Weiner, necessarily show me that level of craftsmanship. Not before, and not since. Sorry, brother. I'm just calling it like I see it. But
Yeah.
I'm glad that he showed up to work here.
Yeah.
And getting to that awesome third act where it does turn into a full-on action movie.
Yeah.
She becomes Linda Hamilton or Ripley. They tore a page out of a Jim Cameron sci-fi movie and turned her into super badass. And that may not be as scary, like the movie does kind of turn action for the last act.
Yeah.
But like I said, it is such a satisfying victory for her. And it's such a great win for the character. It's such a great win for the audience. And it really should have been. Spoilers. Michael Myers, who he's supposed to be Michael Myers, is decapitated by an axe by Laurie Strode. Yeah. And he's shown once again, like he's been pinned to a tree by a car. His body's like obliterated.
He's going nowhere.
And he's still struggling. He's still trying to get it. And there's this awesome little moment of communication where they kind of recognize each other.
And they almost touch hands.
And it's all not quite bittersweet, but like she knows not to get too close to him. She's not falling for anything, but she's going to take the life of her brother, and whether or not he's evil, there's weight to that.
Yeah.
So satisfying.
Yeah.
And so ends the Halloween franchise. End. No more movies.
Yeah, I know, and I even love the fact the little homage they do to the end as well, with her breathing instead of Michael doing that heavy pant, which is a giant tip of the hat. It should have been the bookend.
It's a very, very strong ending, and we could go bravo. And if you want to make more Halloween movies, go ahead. Just restart the franchise or like whatever you want to do. But the Laurie Strode story could not be more satisfying. Drawn to a close.
Make it done. Make it done.
Anything else you want to say about Water the movie?
No. Well, the movie's awesome.
Yeah. It's a strong entry in the series.
Yeah.
Again, it's another slasher movie. I kind of feel we might be in danger of overhyping it, but it's really good at being what it is, and considering the shit that came before it, it is a very distinguished entry.
There is a side note that I wanted to mention, because John Carpenter was first scheduled to come back and direct this movie as well, and I really wish he would have. Steve Miner was late to the game, but the reason why he is basically the studio went no thanks is he asked for $10 million.
You want me pay for me?
Yeah, right. and the reason, and he knew that he was asking way too much, but he felt like he had been denied so many royalties with the original Halloween. That was the number he came up with. That is the money that should have been given to him throughout the years, because of at least the original Halloween being the big box office hit that it was. Kind of a dick move, and I kind of felt in a lot of ways.
Well, I mean, in a way, it would be another way to sell the movie, though, right?
Yeah.
20 years later, Jamie Lee Curtis, John Carpenter, kind of figured you had their back against the wall. The problem is that the slasher movie genre, even a 20 years later anniversary edition with the stars, the idea is a big return on a minimal investment. And you could make... He made the original Halloween for $350,000.
Yeah.
For $10 million for the director's chair?
Yeah.
No, of course they're going to say no. I have to admit that I have to think that he just didn't want the gig, but he figured he'd do it for $10 million, because that will finance his next two films.
I guess what kind of hurts is, what he made.
That he cared that little, that he didn't want to do it, kind of hurts you?
Well, not only that, but then what he wanted to make and what he eventually end up making was vampires.
Yeah.
That's the movie you made instead. Like, if he just would have sort of buckled down, grinned and bared it, H2O was a hit.
Yeah.
It was a sort of sleeper hit for the summer that it came out.
In a time where he kind of needed one, too.
Exactly. Can you imagine the credit he would have gotten from that? He could have made a movie that he wanted to. Yeah. He could have made that Nicolas Cage prison movie that, up and died on the vine.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it just seems sort of disappointing that he pulled that move. Especially that I'd like to think that Carpenter's not hurting for money, especially considering all the movies of his that
worked a lot.
Has been remade, and he's worked a lot. I don't know. I thought it was a bad choice. I get it. I mean, there was a lot of political plays behind the scenes in regard to that movie. I get it, but I guess the little fanboy in me just kind of wish he would have came back.
As a rule, I just don't think he's a fan of sequels necessarily.
No, he's not.
Like, I think that his idea for, like, the Halloween as a series of anthologies would have worked fine, if not for the fact that they'd already made Halloween 2.
Yeah.
Right? The conceit wasn't a bad one.
No.
And the fact that he's not up on necessarily repeating himself, I buy. Like, for instance, the only sequel that he directly made was Escape from LA. And I'm sorry, brother, I am not a fan.
We'll talk about
that
later.
Day. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say about H2O?
I love the third act of this movie. The third act, to me, the third act is everything about this movie, and the smackdown that goes on. I love the table throwing scenes where she's underneath. That's so well shot. Yeah. I love even the shot where she's walking the hallway with the axe, and Michael's essentially been hanging onto the roof and lowers himself.
It's not the most practical hiding spot, and it's something that works visually in a movie more than it would in the real world, but it's cool.
Yeah, it is. It is. No, it's badass. And that ending, when he is against what a car essentially is that what happened?
He gets pinned to a tree,
and he's reaching out. In the theater, I was like, oh. And this
poor Michael.
And this is a mass murder that we're doing. And just how this movie ends. It is such what would have been an amazing ending to a series.
Yeah.
And if they would have ended it here, hands down, I would have said, no doubt, without a doubt, the best slasher series out of all is the Halloween franchise.
But
unfortunately.
Even if you're just like, if you're a movie fan, you'll like it because it's a well-made thriller. If you're a horror movie fan, you got the mother-daughter team of, Janet Leigh and Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah.
From Psycho and the original Halloween. You got a very respectful referencing chapter to the Halloween franchise and a movie that loves horror movies.
Yeah.
So for horror fans, this is a high bar movie.
You can tell they had love in this movie. Yeah. They really did. And it shows.
I think that was the ingredient that had been missing from some of the previous installments.
I agree.
You've heard of the tunnel. The one we all go through sooner or later. At the end, there's a door. And waiting for you on the other side of that door is either heaven or hell. This is that door.
Hello, Miss Strode. Did you enjoy your dinner?
She hasn't said a word in years. Extreme dissociative disorder. The doctors think she's a suicide threat. No, she doesn't stare out that window. God knows what she sees out there.
So we can't seem to stop talking about how much we hate fucking Halloween, fucking Resurrection. And it's not just that it's a movie that doesn't need to exist. I mean, you could argue that any of the Halloween movies after the first one don't necessarily need to exist.
Yeah.
It's that on top of not needing to exist, it sucks. And that it takes such a hot, wet shit over everything that H2O accomplished. The rest of my review is basically going to be an echo chamber of that. It is not good. It is so not good as to be like horrifying. And they got the same director who did Halloween 2. He did a fairly respectful, decent sequel of the original Halloween. So he'll do a fairly respectful, decent sequel to H2O, right? Well, you know what you can't fix in post? The script.
Yo.
And the script was goddamn terrible. And anybody who didn't have, like, anybody with half a brain in their head, or any love for the franchise would have read that script and said, yeah, this is a bad idea.
But people involved in the franchise read the script and came back.
So I'm thinking that maybe they weren't willing to write the $10 million checks the first round, but maybe they were the second. I'm amazed in a lot of ways that Jamie Lee Curtis even did this movie.
I know.
Considering like what they did with her character in the previous movie.
I know.
She was strong and she kicked ass. And in this movie she's weak and she's dead.
Broken.
Yeah. Everything, she loses utterly, like, and she gets killed by Michael, and then the movie starts. We lose our main character in the first 10 minutes of the movie in a really, like, frustratingly anticlimactic way.
I know.
And then resurrection begins. And all of our goodwill has been really spoiled. It's comparable to the great sin that has been discussed before on the podcast of Alien 3. Like, before the movie really gets going in Alien 3.
That's a good reference.
They've killed everything that we loved about the previous movie. They have raped during the opening credits, basically.
Yeah.
And that's what this movie accomplishes.
Yeah.
I mean, right there, before the movie gets into the business of the suspense and the slash, they have a huge uphill battle because they have already upset us.
Yeah.
So you better fucking earn this.
And
this better be the most amazing fucking Michael Myers movie ever.
Yeah.
You better give us a protagonist the equal or better to Laurie Strode.
Yeah.
And you better justify this.
Yes.
Because they have to bend over backwards to say how, in such a ridiculous measure that I won't even repeat it here, how it turns out that it wasn't in fact Michael Myers she decapitated. It was a fucking ambulance worker who was apparently indestructible.
An EMT.
Yeah.
Who's Adam's apple.
Again,
voice
it's
box.
So fucking stupid. It doesn't deserve to be repeated. Like, it's ridiculous.
It's angering.
Yeah, like, he was pinned to a tree by a car. His body was crushed.
Yeah.
And he continued to squirm and try to get at Laurie Strode.
Yeah.
Just like the worst kind of retrofit, you know? He Jason Voorhees'd, you guys. His body came back together and he got up because he's indestructible evil. I will take that. Like, holy shit.
Why bother? Like, at this point, why even bother explaining the return of Michael Myers? Just have him come back instead of
They're
the
shooting
excuse.
a lame as shit internet reality show in the house that Jason grew up in and committed his initial murders.
Yeah.
And Michael just shows up.
Yeah.
It would have still been dumb and we would have had some questions, but whatever.
It would have been way better than what we're given.
Yeah. And it's so much more frustrating that we're then treated to this completely empty cast of characters, none of whom I like.
Yeah.
Actors of note include Tyra Banks, Busta Rhymes, and Katie Sackhoff.
Yeah.
So, Katie Sackhoff is a decent actress, but I've talked about it in the past.
She's redeemed herself with...
I've talked about it in the past how I get irritated by the giggle acting that she can sometimes do. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the giggle acting with that character, just watch this movie.
Yeah.
Because that's everything that irritates me about Sackhoff is in her characterization here. She's
Yeah.
not always this happily, but when she is, I can't fucking stand it.
I know. Look, there have been very few movies that have gotten the Lee Beckman Fuck You award. I can think of maybe but a handful. And to achieve the Fuck You award, to me, you have to be so fucking terrible that I will walk out or I'll press stop to the movie, or you unbelievably achieve the cardinal sin of angering me that I will say fuck off and have said fuck off loudly in a theater. I think of Freddy Got Fingered. That was one that achieved that status. Joe Esterhaus, two of
Jade.
his... Oh, Jade was one of them where that ended at Rainbow Cinemas and I was like, fuck off. Sliver was another one, so you at least have the honor.
You're in good company.
Yeah. Sliver was another one where it ended and I was like, fuck off.
It's one of those movies where you kind of feel like you deserve this because you watched it. Like,
Yeah.
Why did I watch this movie? I mean, like, I really liked H2O. What
Yeah.
was the chances that this was going to be like, this is...
I was excited to see this movie. I thought, okay, another Halloween movie. H2O was good. It's released in the summer. Nope. Fuck off, Halloween Resurrection. Fuck off that you killed off Jamie Lee Curtis in the first 50 minutes. Fuck off, Jamie Lee Curtis, for saying yes. Fuck off that your main character is Busta Fuck Off Rhymes, who's a kung fu lovin' who... No fucking way. Like, no, I'm putting my foot down. Would my Michael Myers get his ass kicked by a severely wounded Busta Fuck You Fuck Off Rhymes? Like, no.
Now, instead of Laurie Strode gloriously finally decapitating her enemy after a 20-year lead-up,
Yeah.
Busta Rhymes beats him up in a fist fight. And
Yeah.
that's how the original Halloween series ends.
Yeah. Like,
That's how they want us to end. That's
Yeah.
what Halloween Resurrection would have us believe that it ends. And that's why I say, like, H2O is where it ends for me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't own this movie if not for the fact that it's on the same disc, literally,
Yeah.
as H2O.
I know.
It's a you got them together.
I know.
And as far as I'm concerned, it's a special feature on the disc as like an imaginary, crazy tangent universe thing. It just doesn't fucking exist.
This is the movie that makes baby Jesus cry. It really, really does. Wow.
The lack of respect for the audience. The thing is that they've learned this lesson before, They twice, like they made part 3, which was just way too much of a departure and just not what any of the fans wanted.
Yeah.
And they, managed to paint themselves all the way into the curse of Michael Myers, which we described as an unbelievably hot mess.
Yeah.
But as far as I'm concerned, that's still canon and still comparatively watchable.
Yeah.
Like, this spits in my face.
I know. This movie basically tastes like taint.
Yeah.
I would rather jump on a bike and sever my taint than watch this again. This is how much this movie angers me.
Okay.
Oh.
I'm going to calm down. I'm going to dial it back.
Okay.
If I pretend that we didn't have the investment of all of these other movies, if this was another slasher movie, I will say that there's a couple of okay kills.
Okay.
This is me removing myself objectively, looking to try to find something, other than just jumping up and down on this movie.
Sure.
There's a scene very early, one of the first kills, the camera operator who's setting up shots in the house.
Okay.
He used the tripod that he was using to set up, and he gets stabbed through the throat.
Okay.
And there was something about that, like, I believed the kill. There was something really, ow, that died.
Yeah.
And for me, personally, and this is, schadenfreude or whatever you want to call it, because I was so irritated by Katie Sackhoff's character, when her head goes tumbling down the staircase,
you're like, woo!
Part of me lit up very momentarily.
Yeah,
like...
I know. But at that point, her character's so annoying that, Yeah, I know. And I don't know whether it was deliberate to make basically all the red shirts or the supporting characters so annoying that you're cheering for Michael. Okay, whatever, fine. But,
and things about it could have worked. Like the fact that it's being broadcast on the interweb and the producer, Busta fucking Rhymes, has a bunch of booby traps in the house to scare the kids, to make the show interesting, because he's not expecting the legit Michael Myers to show up. In fact, at one point, he shows up dressed as Michael Myers.
Yeah.
So you have opportunities for mistaken identity and false scares, which don't really get exploited very well.
Yeah.
And then the least successful thing, which could have worked, was the one kid who was watching the video feed, who's in love with one of the people in the program, and who was able to see that this isn't fake.
Yeah.
Like, everybody else is just watching this and getting off and seeing that it's entertainment, but there's this one kid this is real, and I need to do something, and no one will believe me. And if they'd hired an actor or a screenwriter, that might have worked.
Yeah.
But it doesn't.
Yeah. No,
I just wanted to say those couple of things, because I've ostracized myself in the past for, I think it's boring to just say, this movie shit, this movie shit, this movie shit. The actors, for the most part, showed up and did the job that was asked of them.
Yeah.
I do not think Busta Rhymes is an actor, so I think he was hired for his personality.
Yes.
So I will give him a pass. But everybody else did the script and did the work.
No, I mean, people showed up and hit their mark and said their lines and whatever.
Yeah, there was bad shadows. Rosenthal obviously can direct a movie. I looked at his filmography and found it interesting that he was full of movies that I'd forgotten existed.
Yeah.
Like Ruskies and Distant Thunder.
Yeah.
I remember that those movies existed, but until I read them about a couple hours ago, I had forgotten them entirely.
I guess it's also kind of lame that he homages his own Halloween movie at one point. If you remember, Tyra Banks, she also slips in a giant pool of blood, and that's her demise. I just, at that point, I'm like, like you're referencing, a movie that was the sequel. Come on.
I would argue though that even if the movie, once it came in, if they didn't have Busta Rhymes, if they had a better screenplay, if like the tangents that did work, the false scares did work, and the guy watching outside did work, and then we added a sort of a B storyline that had some energy to it.
Yeah.
I still think that because of that introduction, because of the undoing of H2O and the killing of Laurie Strode, we would have hated the movie.
Yeah,
I think that
I
they
agree.
shat the bed no matter what.
Yeah.
Get fucking Stanley Kubrick, get Steven Spielberg to direct the rest of the movie. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The second they made that decision, it was done.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree. It was such a bad choice. I hope it was worth it. Like maybe Jamie Lee got a new house out of this deal. I don't know what it was.
Even again,
but as a fan, it offended me. Like I was so angry when I walked out of that movie theater. But that first 15 minutes was just wrong from the get-go. And even as the credits rolled, like the opening credits rolled, and we're at this part, I'm like, uh-oh, this doesn't feel right.
Even if you're going to kill her, I've said it before in these podcasts on Halloween, just make it count.
Yeah.
There was something about the way that she died and said, I'll see you in hell, that almost seemed like she was throwing in a towel.
Yeah. And that's not the Laurie Strode I know.
And that's just not, I mean, it's not just that it's not how we want it to end. It just doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right.
Yeah. And that's what Resurrection is. It is a bowel movement gone wrong. It is the poop that hurts. That when it eventually comes out, you are so upset about. It just
Even if I was to agree that the Friday the 13th franchise has some pretty deep valleys and some pretty poor decisions made and like whatever, I think this movie alone for me is why Friday the 13th as a franchise will always be better. As bad as some of the corners in Friday the 13th get, nothing offended me in quite the same way as Halloween Resurrection.
But here's my argument. Because so much joy was put into H2O at this point, because it's followed up with such an awful smack in the face.
They had all the momentum.
They had all the momentum. I just sort of think at that point, the Halloween franchise was put back to a level of credibility that the Friday the 13th and even the Nightmare on Elm Street had long since abandoned at this point. Yeah. Now, I know like the Friday the 13th series has made a lot of money. That reboot did really well. But it just sort of seemed that H2 really brought it back to such a level of awesomeness and respectability for a slasher franchise, mind you, that I thought, you know what, here we go. And honestly, if it would have ended, no doubt in my mind that if H2 was the last film, it would be like,
Halloween's the better series.
It is.
It's weird, like, because with H2O, they had two really decent options. It could basically be, that is a very satisfactory ending to a fairly satisfactory slasher franchise. Yeah. Or it is the gateway to a new era in Halloween. And because of Resurrection, it was neither.
I know. They just should have brought Michael back and that's it. Like an honest-to-God reboot. Don't explain Michael coming back. Honestly, I did like that idea, that script that we'll probably never ever see made to fruition. That the Halloween Returns, where he just shows up in a psych ward and he's captured. People will buy it at this point. Don't explain H2O. It was just bad, bad decision, bad people, and bad Harvey Weinstein. And this is what comes back to my question about Mustafa Akan, because He's still alive. He is dead after this movie is released. 6 months later, he's dead. He's blown up in Jordan with his daughter in a terrorist attack.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that's how he died.
Yeah, he died in the hotel lobby. His daughter died instantaneously. He died 2 days later from the wounds. May he rest in peace. But friend or foe? Don't answer it yet. I want us to answer this at the end. But he went on the record saying, if you're going to keep on going back to the well of Michael Myers, you have to explain this character, the origin, why he's all this stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I hold it responsible.
You're fucked either way, right? If you go keep it simple, you're repeating yourself. And if you try something new, you've strayed too far away, right?
Yeah.
It's not as easy as it would seem.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
If anything, the Weinsteins and definitely Mustafa Akkad is just probably guilty of wanting their goose to keep laying golden eggs long after.
And I know. And you know what? I get that.
Yeah.
I get it. I guess just considering how much fun H2O was, you made this. And it was literally once again, and it's the same mistake they had with number 5, that they had such a hit in their hands that they rushed production and raced right ahead, and you can totally tell that money. Yeah, I know. It just
I can't stress it enough. I like, in the interest of like getting towards the wrapping up the review, I would say, upon concluding this review of Halloween Resurrection, not only do I not imagine a scenario where I would watch it again, as I said before, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It just honestly doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I would encourage anybody who hasn't seen it to not watch it.
Even like completists of the franchise. I want to warn you folks that if you were a lover of the series, especially you young people that come to this series and you are a fan, to a completist maybe, but you will be angered, and you will be thoroughly disappointed.
If you want to watch a slasher movie that has sex and violence, great. There's plenty of them to choose from.
Yeah.
By this point, we have some affection for the series, and there's more energy to it because of the previous movie. And it was terrible. It was beyond terrible.
Yeah.
It's the bottom.
Yeah.
Tonight's brutal murders was described by police as Manson-like in its viciousness. 3 people brutally murdered and a 10-year-old boy being held in custody.
You haven't said a word for 15 years.
This summer, Rob Zombie unleashes a unique vision of a legendary tale.
I understand why they chose Rob Zombie.
Okay.
I understand why, like, to sell tickets, we're going to reinvent Halloween. We're going to remake Halloween. And they've already got a bad reputation,
Yeah.
But Rob Zombie, as much as like I keep giving him negative reviews, while I give him negative reviews, I keep saying he's an immensely talented filmmaker.
Therein lies the rub.
Yeah. And I stay true with this too. I like watching this Halloween movie. This is a filmmaker. I am way more of a fan of Rob Zombie the filmmaker than I am of Rob Zombie the musician.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good things to be said about this Halloween.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it comes down to taste, a matter of personal taste.
Yeah.
I said this when I reviewed The Devil's Reject.
Yeah.
I think it was a really well-made movie.
Yeah.
And he had a very specific thing that he wanted to emulate and a vibe that he wanted to present, and he did it well. But I don't like that particular vibe.
Well, The Devil's Rejects is basically his remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
It's a grunge movie, but I'm talking about his aesthetic.
Yeah, I know.
His aesthetic.
And
like,
it's, yeah.
The Tarantino-esque dialogue, the sort of rednecky characterizations.
Texas rednecky thing that basically...
It's in all of his movies, and this is no exception.
Yeah.
I keep on using the wannabe Tarantino, and it's both... like kind of it's a compliment and an insult simultaneously, because a lot of it is pretty good. Like even scenes that are extemporaneous sometimes are entertaining because of how they're written or how he chooses to execute it or the colorfulness of the characters. But I just have a different set of tastes. I would make different decisions. Like I said, if I was hired to make a remake of Halloween, this is not how I would have approached it.
Yeah.
But with this take, with this approach,
Yeah.
I think he does interesting, good things.
Yeah.
It's just not how I would have chosen to do it. And consequently, I'm not 100% on board with his remake.
Yeah.
But I will say that I think it's worth a look.
Yeah.
I will say if you like slasher movies, it's worth a watch. I
Yeah.
think if you like the original Halloween, it is not disrespectful.
Per se.
But it's a different animal entirely.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. What's frustrating about both Zombie and this remake is, and you said it earlier, that Rob Zombie is a talented filmmaker. One of his strengths is that he does screen violence really well. It's painful, it's bone crunching, it's disturbing. It's basically that element of it is what the Halloween franchise is needed in this modern day and age. And it comes back to, once again, the use of suspense with the violence in the original Halloween, back to that closet scene. There are moments in this remake that it is shocking and powerful. In the director's cut, and also, when I first saw this, I'm sorry, I'm going to admit this, I saw the work print that was leaked online.
Okay.
And in both the work print and the director's cut, and you can get the work print on DVD now too, you can order it. Michael Myers at one point kills, what's his name from Dawn of the Dead original, who is
right.
basically...
He's in the bathroom stall.
Yeah, and basically takes him and slams him ruthlessly numerous times against the bathroom stall. And the wall is literally bent. That is a really good scene. And there are really good scenes in this remake of Halloween.
Reimagining.
Yeah. The violence in this movie is effective. That opening death when the young Michael Myers beats that kid to death, and how it's cut, where it cuts to basically these sort of swooping shots of the trees while we hear the beating going on. That's really well done, and it's disturbing.
The deaths hurt.
Yeah.
Like, in a way that we haven't seen in these movies. A lot of the 80s slashers, you kind of hit one end or the other.
Yeah.
There was the slashers that really seemed to roll up their sleeves and, enjoy the visceral violence.
Yeah.
And then there was the more Friday the 13th Halloween approach, where they were shockingly violent, but usually fairly quick.
Yeah.
You get stabbed in the face, you twitch a little bit, you fall over, you're dead, you know?
Yeah.
Or they see the axe coming down, but we don't necessarily always see the point of impact.
Yeah.
And people seem to die fairly quick deaths. Rob Zombie's not about that. People struggle. We see them trying to escape. We see them dying.
Or Daniel
horribly.
Harris in this movie, eh?
Yeah, and it's like, that is a strength.
Yeah.
We feel the death on everybody. Like, it's handled seriously.
Yeah.
Like, a person just died, and we feel the weight of it.
Yeah.
And that is to the movie's credit.
Yeah.
I go back to it's a personal thing. I just think that what works for me about Halloween, what I always connected to, was in the original Halloween, Michael Myers was called the Shape.
Yeah.
After
we know very little about him.
That's right. One day, that little boy who was Michael Myers on Halloween just snapped and turned into the Shape, and from that day forward, apropos of fucking nothing as far as we know at that point, he's just this evil kid.
Yeah.
And Rob Zombie was all obsessed about answering the why.
Yeah.
He wanted to take the monster out of the shadows, shine a light on us, and show us why.
Yeah.
So he had a redneck family upbringing, and his mom's nice, but she's trying, but it's, she's with the wrong man. She works at a strip club. It's a toxic environment that is around him.
Yeah.
And he is, not given as much attention as he needs, and he's slipping,
and then
he snaps.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, that makes us more connected to him emotionally. It makes me less scared of him.
Well, yeah, no, and I agree. I think one thing that made Michael Myers so terrifying, especially in the original, is we get the idea that the Myers family in the original was at least, and maybe not, obviously not well-to-do, but was your sort of common working class family, sort of sweet-natured, and Michael most likely got raised at that point, at least as pretty well. Like, he wasn't beaten or anything, and he just snapped for no reason. That idea for having some kid for no explanation, no reason given, that he just snaps and becomes the personification of evil, that's terrifying. So when we get that explained, that he came from a bad family, and he never really had a chance. Yeah, it's taken away. I mean, we do root for him, and the scenes with Malcolm McDowell in the hospital, once again, are so well acted.
But the first third of the movie is Michael Myers, becoming Michael Myers. By the time he puts the mask on and starts hunting the teenagers, I felt like I've already watched a movie.
Yeah.
And not the movie that I came to see.
Honestly, you take out the bit with the family because it really isn't needed. And really start that movie in the psych ward.
Start with Laurie Strode. Michael Myers escapes from the psych ward, and Laurie Strode is living in Haddonfield and not knowing what danger she's in.
Okay, but you know what? But then you're just really doing a remake of Halloween. I thought if you're going to do new material, explore more the relationship of Dr. Loomis, and at this point played by Malcolm McDowell, whose choices are interesting. I think it's more just it's Malcolm McDowell being Malcolm McDowell.
Well, it's Malcolm McDowell filtered through the language of Rob Zombie. And, it's weird because when he's dropping these zingers and it seems out of character for him, but much like it's very good analog to Donald Pleasance,
Yeah.
This is not something that McDowell sought out. This was a job he got hired for.
Yeah.
And you want to pay for Malcolm McDowell. Malcolm McDowell is going to do whatever he can to sell your script. That is his job. And I think during the making of this movie, he became legitimately friendly with Rob Zombie and was all on board to continue on.
Oh, no.
But I think initially it was a job.
No, yeah. Oh, no. He got hired. They went to him and he said yes. I guess I just look at the persona of Malcolm McDowell, where he just has one of those faces and voices and has played villains numerous times before.
Almost too many times,
yeah,
really.
That the decision for him to play Dr. Loomis, I think, was not the right choice.
No.
I get the fact that this is a reimagining and you're open to interpretation, and not so much in this one, but in the second one they really let loose that he is this sort of
they fuck him up in the sequel.
Ambulance chasing kind of scumbag. Some of it's there. I mean, he's more sympathetic in this one, and the scenes with him and the young Michael Myers are really, really good.
Yeah.
But yes, the redneck aesthetic that Rob Zombie has it's a wrong choice for me. I just don't think it works. It makes the film dirtier than it needs to be.
It pads the film too.
Yeah.
Like, this is 2 hours and 2 minutes. So I think I watched the director's cut. I think it's 2 hours and 2 minutes, something in that ballpark.
Yeah.
And I honestly think streamlining it would help it a lot too.
Yeah.
It's like a real big feast of a movie, and I think it just needed to maybe know what it was a little bit. I think he's trying to make like an Oscar-worthy slasher movie, and maybe like that's commendable. But I mean, it's a slasher movie. In some levels, you don't need to overthink it too much either.
Yeah, I know. Look, I like Rob Zombie. I really do. I will defend The Devil's Rejects. I understand its criticisms. You have some points with it, but I do think he was on the right path with The Devil's...
It's a very well-made bad movie.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. I thought he had something here. And I think whoever did agree to make this movie, because I'm sure they had other people besides Rob Zombie, but he had just come off the hit, at least the financial hit of The Devil's Rejects, and the Weinsteins controlled his contract. They said, "Hey, let's do."
And I was interested to see what Rob Zombie would do.
Yeah.
That's the sort of frustrating thing. Like,
yeah,
I didn't like House of a Thousand Corpses,
No,
but I was like, I'd watch another Rob Zombie movie.
Yeah.
And then I watched The Devil's Rejects. I didn't like that a lot, but like, he's a good filmmaker. One of these days, man.
What he needs is a very strong producer. And a script that he has not written, but that is kick-ass. And the producer says,
"Look, shop for a script."
Yeah, and say, "Look, do you want to make a hit movie that's going to give you 10 years of making whatever the movie you fucking want? Here's this kick-ass script. I'm hiring you for specific reasons, but you are not going to fight me on this. Let's go."
Rob Zombie needs his sixth sense.
Yeah.
He can make this amazing horror movie that will be universally loved and everybody will say, awesome.
Yeah.
And then he can go on to make a bunch of art wank Lord of Salem horror movies that have diminishing returns.
Yeah.
But I wait anxiously for his horror masterpiece because I think he has one in him.
I agree. He needs a strong producer to tell him no.
Yeah.
And the studio to say no on some of his decisions.
Yeah.
But if they do that, I think he has the power to deliver a horror classic.
When the movie works, and again, I didn't the first third of the movie, like I said, the kills were strong, but the fact that they set him up to be a sympathetic character does not jive with him becoming the source of evil.
No.
Later on in the movie, but when he kills the Danny Trejo character, for instance,
that whole relationship's good.
Yeah, but if we are to believe that he's been driven crazy because of who he was, and that this is revenge on the world for what all has been done to him.
Yeah.
Why would he kill the one person in the world who is decent to him?
Yeah.
There is no morality to him. So trying to give him a soul only to, dismiss it didn't have weight for me. But the stuff that works is when we get to Haddonfield and he starts fucking shit up. Dee Wallace suffers a miserable death at the hands of Michael Myers. And it's just like, oh no.
Yeah.
But I emotionally reacted to it. Not just because I love Dee Wallace, because this guy's here to kill her daughter. She knows it. And she dies not knowing that her daughter's going to be safe.
Yeah.
And she dies badly with glass sticking out of her fucking face, right?
No.
And I was that hurt. That was ugh.
Yeah.
And that was one of the more scary Michael Myers moments. And he was strong too. This wasn't hiding in the shadows or sneaking up behind you. He was full force. Boom.
Yeah.
Death. Ideal death.
Another thing that I do like about Rob Zombie is he knows his horror movies, especially the 80s and 70s horror movies. This film is marinated with horror movie stars. You mentioned Dee Wallace.
Yeah.
What's her name from Howling 2? I want Sybil, whose name currently escapes me.
Dwayne Jones not Dwayne Jones. What's his face from Dawn of the Dead, who we've already forgotten once.
Yeah, but there's a nurse in Halloween who gets killed by Michael Myers. It's Sybil somebody.
Right.
Or I want to say Sybil Danning might be her name, but it could be wrong. Anyways, she's in there and she has a brief scene and she's quite good. There's a lot of, little cameos that make me smile. Yeah. Also, the casting of Tyler Mane as Michael Myers.
Fucking 7 feet tall. He's a huge Michael Myers.
Very good choice.
Yeah.
Very good choice. That's one thing that I think that Zombie got right. So, on that. I think what frustrates me about Halloween, and I think anyone who's going to take this mantle, it was a no-win situation.
Oh, it's tough.
Yeah. Well, no. There was no way that this movie was going to be ultimately good.
It could not beat the original.
Yeah.
So all it could do was either try to distinguish itself, which, to his credit, he tried to do. He tried to make this his own movie.
Yeah.
And, I respect that he...
I know, that's the thing.
I just, again, it was just, I would have made different decisions. I'm not even saying it's a bad movie. I just, It's a decent slasher movie. I just separated in my mind from Halloween. It's it's a good slasher movie. If it was called, The Night He Came to Town instead of Halloween, I might be liking it more just because I didn't have the context of the original. But it is Halloween, and it is Rob Zombie's Halloween, and it is the much better of the two Rob Zombie Halloween movies, I will argue.
Is it?
I will argue that it is.
Okay. Yes. There's one thing I want to talk about here, and that's the final battle sequence inside the house that, that granted we had in the original, but in the remake, it goes on for so long.
Beating her way up through the walls and
the smackdown. Yeah, the smackdown that goes on. Bigger is just not always equal better. It really, I think it's almost a half an hour. I could be wrong. I remember when I was watching this kind of looking at the time. It's not, maybe 15 minutes is what it was. Well, it's long.
It's almost a genre thing to me. I honestly think with movies, bare bones horror movies, slasher movie, monster movie, or your typical rom-com, 100 minutes. It's part of the deal.
Yeah.
If you overstay your welcome, it just starts to sag. It's just, get in, get out, tell your story as efficiently and as entertainingly as you can. And keep it with that. When you add that extra half an hour of padding to it, especially to something that's as familiar as a slasher movie, the time does seem to be stretched out. Going back to some of the good decisions he made, I love that Danielle Harris's character survives the movie.
Yeah.
She has a really vicious attack, but the human body can sometimes surprise you, and despite being savagely attacked, she manages to pull through, and it's such a rare thing in the horror movies. It's only the survivor girl is allowed to survive. Sometimes the boyfriend, but typically just the one girl, the altruistic girl, will survive.
Yeah,
and I liked it. The other interesting thing is Danielle Harris has become this modern scream queen, which is interesting because she was in so many of the Halloween movies.
Yeah.
but I have this sort of similar thing because I associate her with those earlier Halloween movies. It's sort of weird to see her with her tits out for me.
Yeah.
I know there's hundreds of thousands of boys out there who would disagree with me. I remember seeing Danielle Harris in that, at the time good, now terrible Last Boy Scout movie.
Yeah.
And I thought she was great as Bruce Willis's daughter. And I just sort of felt like I grew up with her. So, like, I don't know.
Oh, no. I freely admit I had a little bit of a boy crush on her.
Yeah. I like that. I like Malcolm McDowell's take on it. It's not the same as Donald Pleasance. He's not constantly being the voice of doom. You know, he's just earnestly trying to help, and it's a fairly straight, likable, somewhat heroic performance. And they're gonna undo that in the next movie.
Well, here's another thing. Like, he does die in Halloween.
Well, he has his head crushed pretty substantially.
That was something that made me confused about Halloween 2, because I'm pretty sure that his eyes are bulging out of his skull by the end of this movie.
I was going to mention the second one, but I can just mention it now. But he and Rob Zombie are like legit friends. And like Rob Zombie's like, someone's going to make Halloween 2. I might as well do it because, you know, if it's shit, it'll be my shit, right? Yeah. And so part of the deal was it would be an excuse to work with McDowell again. So all of a sudden retrofit, McDowell's character is still alive. But the first time we see him, he makes reference to the fact that he still has headaches and suffers to this day because of the injuries. But it's so clear that his skull is being crushed in the first movie that it's sort of shoved off to the side. It's like, yeah, he's still alive. But anyway,
one thing
we'll get to part 2 in a minute. But is there anything else you want to say about
another thing I really liked about this reboot is basically Michael, near the end of this movie, basically traps Laurie Strode, played by Scout Taylor Thomas, I think her name is. Scout. We'll call her.
Pool, you mean?
In the empty pool. I thought that was a nice touch. Mm-hmm. That made me kind of go, okay, even with the use of music.
Yeah.
It's
an interesting little suburban trap to be in. That I hadn't really thought of before.
I thought that was a pretty nice little decision. Look, it's frustrating because I was cheering for Rob Zombie for this in a lot of ways, because I thought, here's a talented person. You are taking on the great white whale in a lot of ways. Like, there are some movies that just shouldn't be remade. Halloween was one of them.
Respect, brother. Respect.
Yeah.
Like, I get it.
Yeah. So
I get it that it was not going to be easy.
Yeah. So the fact that you had the balls to take this on, it was kind of like, good for you, because you were lining up to be tarred and feathered by a lot of people, even traditionalists.
And you know what this remake isn't? It isn't terrible.
It isn't boring.
And it isn't boring. And it isn't poorly made.
Yeah.
I look at fucking remake after remake. There's such shit. Did you see the remake to The Fog?
Oh, yeah.
Good God.
Yawn.
You know, so many of the remakes are terrible. And this remake isn't terrible. But
I know.
In the true nature of remakes, it's not 100% necessary.
I know.
And it's just not close
when you hit
to the
when you hit the halfway point, it is essentially a remake of Halloween.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, like I said, it's frustrating because there's things that you kind of go, yeah, and the strength that Rob Zombie has carries over into the second. We'll get to that, because there's some. I really do think he's also a good director with actors. Mm-hmm. He can get amazing performances out of his actors. Not so much in this one. I mean, there's some good ones, and I do like Malcolm McDowell somewhat in this movie. I think another shout out needs to go to Brad Dourif. Maybe not.
He's really good.
Yeah. Like
both of them, he's really good.
It starts off in this, but it'll segue into the second one. I think he gets some really good performances. He gets a really good performance out of Danielle Harris in both of them. I believe her pain when she is lying on the floor and her shirt is ripped open and there's blood all over and she is like howling.
She screams for Laurie to get out.
Yeah, get out. No, it's visceral, it's nasty, it's authentic, it's brutal.
And it makes you love her character. We already liked her character.
Yeah.
But the fact that, as far as she knows, she's using her dying breath to tell Laurie to get away.
Yeah.
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 And again, there's some really fucking strong moments in this movie, and I wouldn't tell anyone not to watch it.
Yeah.
But I'm mixed.
I know. That's it. I know.
I killed him.
Who'd you kill, sweetie? Who'd you kill?
And so it was that we come to the 10th and so far, as of this date, the last Halloween movie, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2.
Yep.
I've already reviewed this movie, and so I will put the ball somewhat near court, but much like I did when we started with the original Halloween.
Yep.
When I did the first review, which was also quite lengthy with my friend Jeremy, there's a couple things that I'd failed to mention at the time that I guess I will mention here.
Okay.
As far as moments that or things that really bothered me.
Okay.
Michael Myers, for the first and last time in the series, actually speaks a line of dialogue in this movie.
Yes. I can't remember the line, though.
I can't remember it off my top of my head either. I think that was the first and most disrespectful decision that Rob Zombie made between the two movies.
Yeah. Oh, there's a couple
That's one of those things akin to Judge Dredd taking his mask off, or like, it's just it crossed the line.
Yeah.
You don't do it.
Yeah.
And in all of my hand-wringing and complaining about the craziness and the tangential nature and the ridiculously long dream sequences that we're subjected to in this movie, I managed to miss that note. Yeah. And I wanted to mention it there.
No, there's...
And the other thing that I wanted to mention is that through all of my ravings, it's a well-made movie. I was wagging my finger pretty severely the first time I did it. Again, much like the first Halloween that he made, it is well put together.
Yeah.
I think that the script is substantially worse.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing about H2, as it's sort of dubbed, if we're going to call it, because it's different than Halloween 2. The first time I saw this movie, I rented it, the DVD, and hated it.
Right.
Hated it with a passion. It was originally on the fuck you award list, because it is not a Halloween movie. I mean, yes, we've got Michael Myers. Yes, we've got Laurie Strode and Sheriff Brackett, the same characters. But it's like, in a lot of ways, Rob Zombie didn't want to make a Halloween movie, so he didn't. Yeah. And there are some cardinal sins that he makes in this movie. One of course, is that Michael Myers speaks, which is no, that is not the Michael I know.
He kills a carload of people, and it's not Halloween yet.
Yeah. Another thing that is against the cardinal rule is, and I know that Michael Myers takes off his mask in other movies, but he spends the
most of it, seems.
Half of it without a mask, and then we clearly see his face and that he is this bearded redneck. So much so that even in the climax, the helicopter light shines upon it and we see it. No.
I think that Rob Zombie wanted him to be a human being, a fully fleshed, fully realized human being.
Okay, but
that's a mistake. Because Michael Myers has an element of supernatural to him. And
especially
when you made him a man, when you gave him a soul and a heart, I think you took away some of the scary. Yeah. And you kind of replaced it, especially in this case, with a lot of pretentiousness.
Yep. What, on a pale horse imagery?
Yes.
Yeah, there's this whole... I don't like the supernatural element that occurs in this movie, where we've got Sharon Moon Zombie, who
he's
I think...
psychic, but not invincible.
Yeah.
He'll push the supernatural so far as to say he can have psychic powers.
Yeah.
But not that he can,
And then so much so
forever.
that we've got basically this supernatural element that can physically hurt people, where in the climax of the movie, and I guess we're jumping right to the climax right away, where they've got, I think, Laurie Strode,
all of the players in one little house,
in one farmhouse, that the supernatural entity of Sherry Moon Zombie, aka Michael Myers' mother, is physically holding down Laurie Strode.
Or is Laurie just mad?
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess so, but that's what we're meant to believe, that she's being beaten by this somewhat psychic spectral presence.
Yeah.
I call BS on.
And here's my theory. I don't think that these bad decisions were being made. And again, I've been saying a lot of nice things about Rob Zombie, and I'm saying a few less nice things here.
Yeah.
I think that he chose to bring Malcolm McDowell back because he liked Malcolm McDowell and wanted to work with him again.
Yeah.
Not because it made sense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think that he brought his wife back because he likes working with his wife, and Sherry Moon Zombie needs to work, and not because it was going to be helpful to the script.
Yeah.
So right when he sat down in front of the computer, cracked his knuckles, and wrote Halloween 2, he was already, coming into it, padding it with two superfluous characters.
Yeah.
And so I think that he undid, and I said this when I reviewed it before, two of my favorite decisions that he made in the first movie.
Yeah.
Dr. Loomis was not, the same Loomis we had before. He was more of a straight-up hero, likable protagonist.
Yeah.
And in the second movie, he becomes an asshole, sellout, hard to listen to, hard to put up with scoundrel, and I don't like him anymore.
Yeah.
And in the first movie, we had, Daniel Harris, the best friend character who's set up to die, live.
Yeah.
And in the second movie, she gets killed.
Yeah, but she gets killed really well.
Well, I mean, we have a lot of impact in it. That was the gut punch that the movie had, and it was his only card to play, really, in a lot of ways. So he had to play it. Like, I knew she was going to die, but it still bugged me that she died. And not just because I like the character, and it sucks that she survived one horrible attack only to die a couple years later. But, it just felt like, no, that was like the one good thing that you did last time. And, like, I liked McDowell the first pass. I don't like him here. I liked Sherry Moon Zombie the first time. I don't like her here. It's like the decisions that he made to keep the family together and make a good experience for him making the movie hurt the movie.
This movie is schizophrenic in its quality. It really is, because there's some things that really, really work, and there are other decisions that are horribly wrong. This movie, the logic is bug fuck crazy. It is amazeballs crazy. I mean, we have a scene in this movie with two EMTs No, are the EMTs? They're essentially some sort of.
I don't know. They're cadaver. They're driving the cadavers back to the Hollywood. Back to the hospital
of Michael Myers.
We've been talking for too long.
Yeah, yeah. And they have this really graphic conversation about necrophilia that is so repulsive.
Yeah.
And then halfway through this really repulsive, disgusting conversation, we have the line of cow, 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 boom. Like, really out of nowhere. And you can't help but giggle at it. And then we have a scene of sheer brutality where Michael Myers wakes up and literally saws off one of these actors' heads. It's one of these weird quality.
Well, in its defense,
it's bizarre. It is just the decision making is bizarre.
In its defense, I mean, I think that we were meant to be surprised by the cow, and we were.
Oh yeah.
He tried to surprise us, and he did. Success, right? But that conversation, that exchange that you were talking about, is sort of right away, right off the top of the movie, everything I don't like about the Rob Zombie aesthetic, right?
Yeah.
So here we go again.
Yeah.
What bothers me more than that is that, like, that scene was just unnecessary. It could have been a plot point that Mike Myers got away. They spent 10 minutes on that.
Yeah.
10 minutes at least. And then we have the 20-minute dream sequence.
Yeah.
Where it's basically just paying homage to Halloween 2. You get the feeling like he liked Halloween 2, but wasn't going to directly make that movie.
Yeah.
So that this huge dream sequence that happens at the beginning of the movie, that eats up almost the first quarter of the movie, ridiculously, was just nothing but... Remember Halloween 2? Pretty good movie, huh?
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get back to this Halloween.
Yeah, the dream sequence is so bad. It is such a bad choice.
You cut that introduction,
yeah.
You cut that dream sequence, and you cut, like, the bulk of the stuff with Sherry Moon Zombie. This movie is 90 minutes long and better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I agree. That dream sequence, once again, is one of those slaps in the face, and personally deserves a fuck you.
And it has a fucking amazing Michael Myers hyperkill in it.
Yeah.
Octavia Spencer's character
gets,
like,
so
fucking brutal death.
Good.
And if it was, like, the actual movie, I would say, yeah, that's, like, a totally awesome Mike, but none of this counts. The movie hasn't even started yet.
Yeah.
Over a half an hour movie happens before the movie starts.
Yeah. Well, here's something that you could argue is that the fact when the movie starts with Laurie Strode walking down the street screaming in pain,
right?
That could, in theory, be real. That maybe she wakes up after she's had the surgery, and that's the dream. That's when the dream sequence occurs. But at the same time, you could also make the argument that the first half an hour of this movie is one long dream sequence.
Yeah. In the first Halloween remake, Scout Taylor Thomas character, whatever her name is, Thompson.
Yeah.
She's a victim, and she's sort of a real teenager, right?
Yeah.
In this movie, they consciously make it quite different. She's suffering from post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
She's turned into a Rob Zombie groupie.
Yeah.
Right? She totally looks like a 90s grunge girl, lost in time.
Yeah.
And she's a bitch.
Yeah.
And, like, I get that she's wounded and that her life has been fucked up and that she'd suffered trauma.
But
you
she's
know what?
very
So did her best friend.
Yeah.
And so did the police officer that Brad Dourif's playing, who's, like, dedicating his life to looking after her and helping her lick her wounds. And again, much like the first movie, I kind of liked her in the second movie. In spite of the fact that there was good, legitimate reasons for her to be fucked up, I didn't like what a bitch that she was.
She's very unsympathetic.
And, like, the only time she's nice to people is when they're bleeding out in front of her. Other than that, she's just too fucking cool and doesn't have the time for them.
Yeah.
You're talking about the cool cameos that he likes to put in the movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great that you got Dr. Johnny Fever in your movie.
Yeah.
What the fuck is that scene doing there?
Yeah.
It's indulgent and unnecessary.
Yeah.
And if you lost every scene that was indulgent and unnecessary in the movie, like I said, it would be very streamlined.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough. As big a mess as it is, though, I think it's one of the better made Halloween movies of the franchise.
I know. I do want to talk about my man here, Mr. Academy Award nominated Brad Dourif.
Right.
In the midst of this muck of a movie is a really amazing performance.
He's the tragic hero of these two movies.
Yeah, he really is in a lot of ways. The dinner scene, and this is right before all the chaos really goes down with the two girls, both Danielle Harris and Scout Taylor Thomas, that he has where he's eating pizza. You believe that this character truly, honestly cares for these young women.
Yeah.
And that
he's dedicated his life to protecting him.
And there is
he fails.
Yeah, and there is a really good human being. That scene at the dinner table is really, really good. It's really well edited, shot, acted, everything. And it's led by Brad Dourif.
Yeah.
The scene where he discovers his daughter
Brutal.
is so good. And once again, it's a combination of Brad Dourif bringing it and the really good use of edit and sound.
Yeah, I've actually flashed images of young Danielle Harris because she's been an actress for so long.
Well, not only that, but her death scene.
Yeah.
We see more, we hear, not see, we hear more of her death scene as he starts to break down, and then no sound, and we see him bawl.
Yeah.
That is a very good device, a very good trick to use.
And it shows that Rob Zombie understands how to emotionally manipulate you, and he knows how to give, by taking away things, accent all of the great stuff that Brad Dourif is giving you.
Yeah.
Again, I have nothing but respect for Rob Zombie. But
I
he
know.
keeps on making movies that disappoint me.
I know. I know.
I dislike more of his movies than I like. Or I mean, that's severe. I wouldn't recommend all of his movies more than the movies that I do recommend.
Yeah.
But I'm always down to watching the next Rob Zombie movie because, like I said before, he's got an amazing horror movie in him, and I will sit here and wait patiently for it to come.
I know.
Halloween 2 is not it, and I cannot agree with you that it's better than the first.
Okay, but here's the thing. I respect the fact that he swung for the fences because basically what the Weinsteins did is they rolled up to his house with a big truckload of money and said, okay, Rob, you have creative control. Give me a sequel to your Halloween. Yeah. And he went, I can do anything, right?
Yeah.
I don't really want to do another Halloween movie, but it's going to be called Halloween 2. Okay. And yes, there's a lot of pretentiousness in this movie. The whole philosophical blurb at the beginning of the movie about the white horse, the dictionary thing.
But again, if you need to explain your themes that implicitly at the beginning of the movie, it's already sort of makes me furrow my brow, right?
It's pretentious, I agree. But I at least respect the fact, especially within a big budget studio system, he got to make the movie he wanted to make.
Movies that are reliant on anything that came before it, other than the tribute to Part 2, like I said. This was completely in new territory for him.
Yeah.
So this is a Rob Zombie movie more than it is an homage to, say, the world of Halloween. Yeah. Especially when you look at Lords of Salem. He seems to really like this really crazy, edgy, almost art house kind of approach to horror. Yeah. And I think that can work.
Yeah.
But I think he's better at doing sort of the straight kills. Like I've said, those deaths really have impact.
Oh, God. The scene where he beats in that bodyguard to that
boot, put the boot right through his face.
Oh my Lord, like this movie is brutally violent. I can't remember the last time that I was physically ill, physically affected from the sheer brutality of a movie quite like this. Like, this movie is insanely violent.
The trade-off is, though, I think, sorry.
Yeah.
The trade-off is when you go that route, which is more honest and more, I think when Jeremy and I were talking, he said it's more human in a way.
Yeah.
Because, like, people don't just go off like light switches. They rage against the dying of the light.
Yeah.
Right? But the trade-off is that you lose the fun.
Yeah. Oh, no. I mean, this movie is not fun.
And it's a weird line for me because I think that there may be a sweet spot right in the middle, but it's tricky.
Yeah.
Because if it becomes so ugly that I don't enjoy it anymore, it detracts from the entertainment value to me. But if it's not taken seriously enough, if it just becomes a cartoon and I don't care about anything, then it's so. I'm not saying that it's easy. But the trade-off with that level of violence is that it's not fun. The scene you're talking about is followed by the strip club. He goes to the place where his mom used to work to kill whoever's fucking there, right?
Yeah.
And both, like, it's just an ugly scene. He kills the stark naked prostitute or stripper,
and then he brutally kills the owner
of the place. He also teleports in this movie.
Okay.
For some reason, he goes to the house, I believe, and he attacks the Daniel Harris character.
Yeah.
Then he teleports to the club, and he kills the two kids in the van.
All right.
And then he teleports back to the house.
Yeah. Yeah, and once again, this leads to the sheer insanity. Look,
why did he kill her friends? Because it was a slasher movie and Michael Myers needed to kill them?
Yeah.
But, like, his goal was Laurie. He had,
why did
so many other...
Why did he need to, like, walk around in a field with without the mask?
Yeah.
Look, and this is where I came to sort of somewhat appreciate this movie. Because, like I said earlier, the first time I watched this movie, I hated it. Because it's not a Halloween movie. It's not. And Halloween traditionalists and completists... You have the right to hate this movie.
Yeah.
I have a soft spot for movies that fly so off the rails that, a night of movies so bad that it's fucking weird good.
Yeah. It's a fascinating catastrophe.
Yeah. I sort of tip my hand to it, and it's kind of deliberate.
And it's not boring.
No. Once again, it's not boring. You're not
frustrated by, I've seen this before, because you haven't.
Yeah, no.
It's just not good.
Yeah,
but
like
it's new.
This and sort of like the Adventurers of Buckaroo Banzai would be this really odd double feature where you've got two, egomaniac directors that have complete control over a project and make a film that no sane person would ever make.
Maybe this was a movie that was made just for Rob Zombie.
Well, absolutely. I think Rob Zombie, when he finally, put this movie together right before he had the Weinsteins come in, and I'm sure he might have masturbated to the movie going, oh, I did it.
Rob Zombie may think this is amazing, but he's in the minority.
Yeah, but look, this movie, it's so bugfuck crazy. It is. It's nuts, and it's offensive to traditionalists, but there's something that made me like it. I don't know if "like it" is the word I always use. Made me something appreciate that it exists.
I'll go back to the last time you were on the show. We reviewed a little movie called Reign of Fire. And I said that it's an experience that's probably worth having.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something that can be echoed with this part too. Yeah. It certainly doesn't offend me in the way that Halloween Resurrection offended me. But I couldn't say that I can't defend that it's a great movie.
I think that explanation is a lot more...
It's an interesting failure.
Yeah. And I think that explanation is more apt to this, to Halloween 2. Yeah, where it's a very interesting failure. And if you want to see why it's important to have producers behind you saying, no, keep this, but no. This would be a shining example.
But, I mean... It could have been worse.
Oh yeah.
Like we could have ended this podcast on Resurrection.
Yeah.
The two of them. What was your least favorite Halloween movie and why?
The movie that shall not be named. I can't do it anymore, man. I can't do it. I can't. I just, wow.
The movie that does not exist.
The movie that does not exist. We know the title. It's not even the name anymore. It's just yes. That's number 10.
Well, I'm not surprised.
Yes, here we go. Number 9. Basically, I've got Halloween 3, The Season of the Witch. Mm-hmm. I think just the decisions made in this movie are just too stupid. And I mean, I admire them for, thinking outside the box and going outside the whole Michael Myers universe, but it's just a dumb movie. It's dumb. I would have paid to see them steal Stonehenge than anything else they put in that movie. At number 8, we have the debacle that is Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. There's just so many decisions wrong with this movie that it's... And Joe Chappelle, what were you thinking?
Whoops.
Yeah. What? Whoops?
Well,
okay.
The movie.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Whoops, exactly. So, Halloween 6, Curse of Michael Myers. Number 7, we have Halloween 2, Rob Zombie's version. It's an interesting failure, but some of the decisions are so maddening that you just grr. But it's just, once again, you're a talented guy, Rob Zombie. Just, you need a strong producer. So that's number 7. Number 6, I have the very long, boring Halloween 5. This film passes through you like a McDonald's milkshake, and out comes bile. It's boring, and the only thing I can recommend is it tries to expand the universe with questions that are not answered in this movie. So we have Halloween 5 at number 6. Number 5, we have Rob Zombie's Halloween. Once again, it's sort of schizophrenic in its quality. It's interesting, and I tip of the hat. Whoever was going to make this remake was going to be put through the coals by the general public. So good on you for you trying, but there's some decisions here that just... Interesting failure once again. Number 4. And here we go. I'm going to put Halloween 2. Interesting sequel. More of the same. Start of the universe. It's not bad. It's okay.
Right.
Yeah. Number 3, and this is where I debated long and hard, was Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. I guess it sort of started... some of the goodness came back, maybe, and it's the return to joy, I guess, with Michael Myers. There's a lot of good things that happen with it. I enjoy the little Easter egg, I guess, of, the station wagon coming by.
Right.
We have characters that we like. I like the expand the universe with the militia and whatnot, and they use that well.
Right.
So I'm going to say Halloween 4 is number 3. Number 2, obviously, is H2O. I think this is when this movie, that's where the series should have ended. It ends on such a high note. It's, a homage, at least to the Halloween movies. I love the fact that they just said, fuck it, forget that we've had 4 and 5. They painted 4, 5, and 6. They painted themselves into a corner.
Yeah.
Let's just reboot it. And it's also mercifully short. That end fight between her and Michael is
the tits.
Yeah, it really is. It's the tits. I like that response. It's so good. And of course, number 1, was there any doubt? It is the classic. It is The Tempest. It is John Carpenter's and Deborah Hill's. I'm going to say this as well. It's Halloween.
Yeah.
It's a classic, and what more can I say?
That's a great list, man. We were super close.
I
was all fucking on board. I thought it's going to happen. I really fucking thought it was going to happen.
I know exactly.
I was talking through the reviews. I was thinking, no, we're on the same page here. I think we're going to match.
I think I know exactly where we split.
In 10th position, Resurrection. It didn't happen, you guys. It just didn't happen. I will bend over backwards and I will forgive a lot of bullshit, but I do not forgive, or I cannot apologize for Resurrection. Happily, at the very bottom of this list, I am done with that movie. In ninth position, Halloween 3 Season of the Witch.
Figured.
The fact that it has absolutely nothing to do with Michael Myers, like Tommy Lee Wallace himself says the biggest problem with the movie is that it's called Halloween 3.
Yeah.
I would argue that it would still be a lame movie if it was just called Season of the Witch, it would still be a long forgotten, footnote horror movie of the 80s. But I think it also says something about the quality of the film that shall no longer be mentioned, that in spite of the fact that Michael Myers does not appear in this film, it's not at the bottom of the list.
Yeah.
So, there we go. In 8th place, The Unbelievable Mess that is The Curse of Michael Myers.
Yeah.
That would be part 7, if I believe. Yeah, 7.
Yes, it
Halloween
is.
7, The Curse of Michael Myers. They made 2 movies out of it, neither of which are any good.
Yeah.
It was a hot mess that they were trying to save after the fact, and I don't think any amount of life support was going to save this patient. So there it is at 8th place. In 7th place, the catastrophes, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2.
Yep.
What a crazy movie!
I know.
What a well-made, well-intentioned, crazy
movie.
bad movie.
Yeah.
Like, just when you think the movie's gone, like, as crazy it's gonna get, no, he's gonna raise the bar for you.
Yeah.
And in many ways, it's kind of just worth looking at because of just how fucked it is.
It's like a car accident. You can't take your eyes off it, but at the same time, you shouldn't be looking at it.
In 6th position, then? Yes.
Yeah.
That would be Halloween 5. It was the slapdash, quick, not as good, sort of fast-tracking sequel to the much superior 4th entry.
Yeah.
It's not completely awful, but it seems like with minimal effort, it could have been better than it was.
Yeah.
It's probably the most forgettable entry in that it's not like dramatically awful, but it's not so not great that it's kind of bland. It's
Yeah.
a flavorless sort of experience.
Yeah.
5th position, Halloween Remake. I again, that's past the halfway point in the list. Like, I like it. I mean, I think it's an interesting movie, but the stuff working against him, anybody making this movie had like an uphill battle, and a lot of my things that I don't like about the movie are personal choices. I just didn't like the track that he took with the characters, but it was totally his. Like, I don't think it was wrong. It was just a choice that I would not have made.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that there's a chance that people out there will like this movie way more than I do. So it's on the top half of the list.
This is where I think we differ.
It is. In 4th position, I put Halloween 4.
Yeah. I kind of knew that.
It was the apology for part 3, and it's decent. And I think, honestly, the ending is the real sort of thing that in a way elevates it. It was a pretty industry standard slasher horror movie, but they really kind of boot fucked us at the end with that ending, and a lot of them won't even try to do that anymore. It's just like, person in peril, person is rescued, credits. They don't try to do that stinger gotcha sort of a Halloween twist. So it was a little bit more ambitious and a little bit more respectful. So I there it is. That's where it ended up for me. So in 4th position, Halloween 4. In 3rd position, Halloween 2. I think for me, a lot of it is the location of the hospital. It was still in Haddonfield, but it was different enough to distinguish itself as distinct. Like, when you get to the 4, 5, and 6, in a lot of ways the movies blur together in your mind because it's all just random neighborhood in Haddonfield and the house where Michael Myers committed his murder. Like, there's a sameness to him. So it distinguished itself in that way. I mentioned it in the review. I'll mention it again here. I really like the moment where she shoots out his eyes. I don't know why, because it's absurd, but I've always really liked that scene. It's crazy. So that brings us to 2nd place, where we're back on the same ground again. H2O. 20 years after Halloween, they made a movie nowhere near the equal to the original Halloween, but very respectful, very solid, and putting the series back in the right step again. It's like, yeah, by the time we got to part 7, it was a pretty hot mess, and for this one, I got the feeling like everybody involved cared, and it paid off for the fans and for the box office, for everyone. It worked out. And yes, of course, the first movie is the best.
Yeah.
John Carpenter's Halloween is a straight up classic.
Yeah.
And I will have words with anyone who says otherwise.
Yeah.
I know if you're not a fan of slasher movies generally, you're probably not going to be a fan of Halloween.
Yeah.
But as slasher movies go, as I said in the past on the podcast, I don't think it's been beat yet.
Yeah.
Here in 2016, I have not seen a better slasher movie than Halloween.
So, brings me back to that question I've asked throughout the podcast. Mustafa Akkad, friend or foe?
Friend.
Yeah? Why?
Because he bankrolled the Halloween franchise. And for all its odd corners and for all its missteps and for all its frustrations, if he didn't do that, we wouldn't be sitting in this room talking about it. We wouldn't have the Halloween franchise as it exists to, poke sticks at and say, this is what I would have done. You guys are stupid. We're geniuses. Our nerd, embracing of these movies is made possible by Mustafa Akkad. And I don't think, his motivations were much beyond, making a lot of money in this Hollywood system. I don't think he didn't care about the Halloween movies, but I think that it was, like I said, it was his golden goose. And he wanted to get as many eggs out of it as possible. Some of the eggs were a little sour, but at the end of the day, I'm glad somebody, was there. That said, I guess if it was one producer, whoever that producer's name would have been, be it Mustafa Akkad or John Smith or, whoever that person would be, I would be grateful to. But in the end, I think the real people we have to thank for this are Deborah Hill and John Carpenter.
Yeah.
And, I like it. I have more of an affection, as I've said in the past in this podcast, for the Friday the 13th sort of carnival, the sort of ride movies of these sort of slower suspense beasts. But I have grown to really love the Halloween franchise. I've always kind of had a soft spot, as goofy as it is, for Friday the 13th. Mm-hmm. And the fact that age has been pretty kind in a lot of ways to the Halloween movies, the 80s-ness sort of increases their charm nowadays, as opposed to, they used to kind of taint them for me.
Yeah.
I'm happy that they're there, and it was kind of nice to revisit them. It does take me back to a different time and place in my life.
A much simpler time, yeah.
And when I didn't watch these analytically at all and enjoyed them. And now that I'm, middle-aged and I'm looking at these movies again and putting much more energy into sort of taking them apart, I'm enjoying them on a different, maybe deeper level, maybe not.
Yeah.
I don't think you ever love movies the way you do when you first sort of discover something.
No, that's true.
But a long history of me loving Halloween movies, and wherever it goes next, be it good, be it bad, I'm gonna follow the trail. I'm on board.
I'm a lover of this franchise so much that I will go and will be excited to see the next Halloween movie, so much so that I will probably pay money to see it in the theater. Just that how much respect and love I do have for the franchise. I sort of equivalent, if I was to give some sort of personality or character to, let's say, the Friday the 13th franchise and the Halloween franchise, the Friday the 13th franchise to me is like that really good friend who's at the party who always does the dumb stuff.
He's entertaining.
He's entertaining, but he's the friend that climbs a tree and hurts his head on the way down.
Right.
The Halloween franchise to me is like that girlfriend that really broke your heart one or two times. She was really awesome for at some points of the relationship, but she really hurt you. But
the relationship you never completely got over.
Yeah. Yeah. She's that girl that, you look back, now that there's some distance and you're maybe, married with kids, and you kind of go, you were a big part of my life, but you've hurt me so. I think that's why I just hold it just a little bit above the Friday the 13th series. It's just because it has hurt me.
It was your first love?
It was in a lot of ways. It was my first love in the horror movie franchise.
Well, that's a lot for any relationship to live up to, Mr. Beck.
All I'm saying. And now that I've said that, I feel like I need help. Okay. Anyways,
it may not be an entirely healthy relationship, but my relationship with Halloween shall continue. It's all over, kids. We got all the way through it. We made it through 10 Halloween movies in 2 episodes. And I hope everybody had a good time with that. That was a tricky list, and it was really close. Oh, I I can't believe that Mr. Beckman hasn't won an episode yet. We've come so close so many times, and I might have to give the man an honorary R&R award just for sticking it out and keep coming back. If you want to tell me how you would rank these 10 Halloween movies, you can do that by writing Larry Parsons at rankandreview@gmail.com. That's RANKNREVIEW@gmail.com. And as usual, you can find the show on Facebook, you can find the show on iTunes. And I gotta tell you guys, by listening to the show, you have proven to me that you have great taste in podcasts. Such great taste, in fact, that I think you should share it with all of your friends. Let your friends know that Rank and Review is out there and that it's worth listening to. And I'll talk to you all next week. Thank you so much, kids.